Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics podcast. I'm your host, Simple Electronics, and with me I have a very special guest, Matou from Matou Makes. How are you?
Hi, I'm Matou. I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's starting to warm up here. How is it? How's the weather in your neck of the woods?
Oh, it was pretty warm. So I live in Germany, and the last few weeks it was starting to get pretty warm. But yesterday we got snow again, and today.
Are you saying Germany has more snow than Canada right now?
Maybe.
Yeah, we have none left here, at least in Ottawa where I live.
Okay. Yeah. So this morning there was actually some snow. It's gone by now. So it's the afternoon, late afternoon now for me. It's gone by now in the sun, but there might be more snow tonight. So yeah, it's a little bit unusual.
What's happening in the world that Germany, which typically, in my understanding, is pretty mild all the time. Like, in fact, you guys are starting to be known for your heat waves in the summer. What's happening?
Oh, yes, we are. Well, especially the winters get a lot warmer. So I'm in the south of Germany, so we used to have quite a bit of snow when I was smaller and younger. But by now it's uncommon for snow to last for a longer time, or to even stay for a few days. But this winter we had a decent amount of snow, so it was snowing quite a bit. And now it's April and it's still snowing, even
That's
after
crazy.
We had more than 20 degrees Celsius in between last few weeks. But now it's cold again.
For context, it was 19 degrees Celsius here in Ottawa yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's that's crazy. So for my viewers that don't actually know you, I hope they're going to go and subscribe to you. But can you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So I'm called Matou, which is not my actual name. My full name is Matthias Matoschek. So Matou is pretty much an abbreviation of my last name. And that's what my friends started calling me sometime during high schools. And the nickname stuck with me and I kind of like it. Bit difficult to pronounce, I guess, but it doesn't really matter how it's pronounced. So Matou is great. And I have a YouTube channel called Matou Makes. So I started that last summer. And my motivation for the YouTube channel was I had so many projects in mind forever that I wanted to work on. And somehow I never finished my projects. I started a lot of projects. Like I was like that forever. I always had so many ideas in my head, and starting projects started to tinker around with things. And it came to the point where I really wanted to finish a few of these things. And last year I decided that maybe doing monthly YouTube videos would get me to that point, because then I would have some kind of deadline and some kind of incentive to finish a few of these projects. And I think so far this has been going pretty well. So I did quite a few projects so far. I finished them. I made videos about them. And yeah, so that's about my YouTube channel, Matou Makes.
For those who have not seen your YouTube channel, I find it a little incredible that you only have, you're in the low 800 subscribers right now, but the quality of the videos suggests that you should be a lot bigger than that. So that just goes to show we often have conversations here on the podcast about how the YouTube algorithm is really not fair for small creators. And I think your channel is sort of the description of this, because I'm looking, all the projects are high quality. The video quality is very good. There's storytelling, there's humor, but yet still only 800 subscribers, which doesn't make sense to me. How do you feel? How do you feel, first of all, about your projects? Do you feel like they are high quality? Do you feel like they need a lot of improvement? What do you feel about them?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much. That's so nice to hear from you. And well, I'm still a pretty young YouTube channel, right? So I'm not surprised that it's still at, in air quotes, 800, only 800 subscribers, and it's been growing quite quickly. Just the last month, so last 4 weeks, I think that the number of subscribers doubled, and I think YouTube is picking up that something's happening there, and I guess it makes sense that one needs kind of regular content to gain more people that watch it. But yeah, I guess you're probably right. The YouTube algorithm, I mean, there's a lot of criticism about that, and it's sometimes unfair and so. But I feel actually pretty good about where I'm at the moment and how it's growing. So that feels pretty well. And about your question about the project, so I'm interested in a lot of things, and so my one of the main reasons for me was to start the channel was, like I said, to motivate myself to finish some of the projects. But another big reason for me is I'm very interested in making videos. So I haven't done that before, at least not a lot. Like I've sometimes played around with filming something, editing something, but I've never really done any films or videos or anything. But that's something that it interests me a lot. So about the quality of the videos, I'm trying to make interesting and visually appealing content, and also to put some storytelling in there so that it's not boring to watch. So I think that's lucky for me that I'm also interested in that, and in this aspect as well, in addition to making the projects themselves. And well, the quality of the projects, I was sometimes surprised how well some of the projects were received, even though I thought this was just, I don't know, like a small test for myself or something that was just trying out. And then suddenly people seemed to very like it, such as my first hydroponics video. So I think that was one of the first ones. It was definitely one of the first ones. Might have been the first one that the first video that I did last year. I had one video before that, which was way too long. That was about a mechanical keyboard. So there's a pretty cool wooden mechanical keyboard that I really like, but so that's a commercial product. But I didn't like the key switches, and I made a video about how to replace the mechanics in the key switches to have a little bit of a lighter touch. And that was my very first one. I really don't like that video, so that was way too long. So not really interesting content in there. But then about half a year later, I started with my regular videos, and I think so one resolution of mine is to improve something with every video. And I know it's not possible. It's probably not a good idea to start with the idea to have the perfect video from the beginning. So I started out and I said, okay, I'm just going to start with this YouTube channel, just see how it goes. But I want to keep improving in small, very small incremental steps, just keep learning and keep doing new things.
I watched your last couple of videos. So I made my way down from the cable camera, which is the most recent one, mm-hmm. and I went down to the chess playing 3D printer. And I'll tell you that want for a sort of like a filmmaker's eye, that want to make videos is really apparent, because you can see the camera angles are all well decided. You've got fantastic lighting, a little bit dramatic lighting, I might add.
Yeah.
It's not always like a full flood fill. Like you'll see a lot of the more informational YouTube videos be. So I can definitely see that video making sort of side of it as well. Are you familiar with This Old Tony?
Yes, yes. Great channel.
So you give me those kinds of vibes in your videos, which I think is a compliment, and I hope you take it as that as well.
Absolutely. I love the channel, so thanks very much.
So can we talk about your latest project then?
Yeah, so maybe I thought maybe for the listeners I could also like you say, my projects have been kind of all over the place, so maybe I could give a short summary of what kind of projects I do.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, so I do pretty much what interests me, and I have very broad field of interest. Usually it has something to do with either some kind of electronics, 3D printing, or well, I've had one or two projects that didn't fit that description, but most of the time it's something like that. And yeah, so I started out last summer with a hydroponic system, so which is plants growing in some nutrient solution instead of soil. And I had this idea. I've become very fascinated watching videos about hydroponics on YouTube, and there are some really cool systems. And I had the idea, so is there something 3D printed maybe? And there are some 3D printable versions on YouTube and on the internet already, and they're pretty cool. But I wanted something small that fit on my kitchen windowsill. And I don't think it's the best size. So for growing plants, it's pretty small. For a very small apartment, it might be a good idea. I think if one is serious in growing plants or in gardening, this is probably not the right way to go. But that was one of the things that I just wanted to try. So I designed one. So designed a 3D printable system, printed that, and that was, I think, one of my first videos that was very interesting to me. And then I also did one building a remote control for a small drone. So I have this toy drone called the Tello, I think. So I think, I'm not sure who makes it, but it's a very small quadcopter, which usually is controlled with an app on the smartphone, and you can attach like a gamepad, which gives you these controls like a more traditional remote control for RC airplanes, which is kind of nice. But then a friend of mine, Bleep Track, she made some beautiful PCBs so she does generative art, and she did generative art PCBs, which were really cool. And I bought two of them, and I wanted to incorporate them. And these PCBs, they are pretty much just capacitive touch buttons, so you can use them for whatever. And so I built a 3D printed remote control for this drone that incorporates these touch buttons, so it looks really cool. The best looking part by far is that artsy PCB in there. And yeah, and then I did some smaller projects. Did a pen out of cork, which was kind of a filler project because I was working on the remote control, and that took longer than I hoped it would. I did one more instructional video about 3D printing, like an introduction, what are the steps that are required for 3D printing, so what's happening. I did an upgrade on my hydroponic system, and yeah, you already mentioned earlier, I upgraded my 3D printer to be able to play chess. So I designed and 3D printed a mechanism that gives my 3D printer like an arm or like a gripper that can grab chess pieces and move them around on the build plate. And on the build plate, I 3D printed a chessboard. And that was really fun. So yeah, maybe we can go into that later or something. And then my latest one is building a cable camera. So I really want, like, for this filming and creating cool camera shots, it would be really cool to have some movement with the camera, and that's really difficult to do without another person helping, and as I usually do everything by myself. So there's very expensive solutions like robotic cameras or electric camera sliders, robotic camera arms, and things like this, but that's super expensive. But I was super intrigued by these systems that they have in like football stadiums, where the camera is mounted from 4 cables that are in the corners of the football stadium, and then the camera can pretty much move wherever it wants within that space. And I thought that might be a cool idea to have that in small, and that will be a little bit of a long-term project of mine, I think. I did the first steps, which was the most recent video, just trying whether I could get it to work, what kind of math is involved, what kind of controller I want. And so I have all kinds of different projects. One of them was in January, I did Kintsugi, which is a Japanese concept that I really like. So Kintsugi is, it literally means a golden joinery, I think. So kin is gold in Japanese, and tsugi is probably joinery or something. And it's the concept of repairing broken things, but not in a way that you can't see the break anymore, but in a way that highlights it. And in that case, it's usually broken pottery, and you highlight the breaks with golden or silver color or something like really visually appealing, so you can see the cracks, and it looks pretty cool. So all kinds of different projects.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I was just picking the cable camera as a jumping off point, but if you have a project you want to start with, we can definitely talk about that. I mean,
let's go with the cable camera. It's I've been thinking about it a lot, and it's so much fun to work on this. I've been talking to people about it, and I have a few friends that I talked to about it, and it's such an interesting concept. It's kind of hard. It's kind of on the level that I think I can get it somewhere, and I have plans for that. So so we might stick with this for a while, because for me that's currently very interesting.
Yeah, so just to simplify it for the viewers, basically you have 4 posts above your workbench, and feel free to correct me whenever I'm wrong. Yeah. But you have 4 posts, and from those 4 posts are 4 stepper motors with a pulley on them, going up to a pulley on top of the post, and then down the pulley to a sort of like a holster that holds a camera. Yes. And so there's 4 of these wires holding this camera up, and the goal is that you can move the camera anywhere in 3D space between those 4 posts simply by tuning the length of those cables. Exactly. And that allows this thing to go straight vertical up and down, or straight horizontal, or straight in any direction, or a combination of all of them at the same time. But it becomes complicated because in order to move the camera left or right, for example, without making it go up or down, you then have to dynamically adjust the length of the other cables, not only the quote unquote, the one that you want to pull towards. So exactly, that becomes complicated, right? There's a little bit of math involved there.
Yeah. It's the way I did it. It's not too complicated, fortunately, but I'm not convinced that I'm doing it the best way I can. So far, no one told me about any better way to do it. But yeah, it's math-wise, like it's very interesting. So a typical 3D printer. So if people have seen that before, or like generally robots with axes, they usually have, like a 3D printer moving its head. It has 3 axes, so and it moves along those. And I have the same coordinate system, so I also have 3D dimensional space. But like you say, I have to kind of calculate how do I have to move these wires or cables in order to get the camera or whatever I'm moving to the point that I wanted to get to. And yeah, this is a little bit difficult without seeing it. So yeah, I encourage people to have a look at to Google cable camera, or to maybe have a look at the video to just get an idea of how it looks like.
Your video is actually quite descriptive. Like, you put graphics up and you do some explanations. It's real simple the way you explain it. But I mean, I've made some stuff myself, and I know that the way it looks simple on the video, it's definitely not that simple behind the scenes, though, because there's quite a bit of math that you're running this from an ESP32,
Yes.
And that ESP has to do quite a bit of math in the background, right?
Yes. So it took a few iterations to find out how to get it to work, but it's actually not super complicated, which leads me to believe that there's probably a better way to do it. So what I started out with, so yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about my steps and how this project evolved. Because what I started out with math-wise, so in the beginning I even had it on an Arduino Uno. Because I don't even know why. Why didn't I start with the ESP? I don't know, not sure. I think because it was easier to program or something. Anyway, so what I did, I took these 4 pillars. I have the 4 cables attached to in the beginning it was just a weight in the middle, and these 4 cables. So if I imagine that my workbench or my desk or the space above it, to be more specific, is a 3-dimensional space with a 3-dimensional coordinate system, then what's pretty simple is to, if I know where the camera or the weight currently is, so the thing that I want to move, then it's pretty simple to calculate the lengths of the wires or the cables to their mounting points, so to the pulleys that where they're attached, because that's simply, so if I have the 3-dimensional coordinate of the thing that I'm moving, and I know the coordinates of these pulleys, then it's simply calculating the distance between these, which is just squaring, which is just subtracting the coordinate of the pulley from the coordinate where my weight is, and then squaring these values, summing them up, and taking the square root, which is a fairly straightforward way to do it. And then I do that for all 4 of these mounting points, and I pretty much know how long the cables are if I've measured correctly where my mounting points are and where my weight or camera is at the moment. And yeah, my first idea was to just then do the same thing for my target point. So if I want linear movement, so I just want to move from where I am at the moment on a straight line to a different point within the space that I'm considering, then how about I just do the same thing for the second point, just calculate, okay, if I want to be there, how long should the 4 cables be? And and then just see in software, how long am I currently? Do I need to lengthen the cable? Do I need to shorten it? And then do the thing for all the 4 cables. And even this kind of works. There's a few issues with these because, so first of all, some of the cables will have slack in between, because sometimes in the beginning I was just moving all of or tensioning and so retracting or extracting the cables at the same speed, and just so if one was, I don't know, 50 millimeters and it should be 600 millimeters, I just I just turned the motors at a set speed until we were at the length I wanted it to have, and this works. So it doesn't. I was afraid that this at some points it might be a problem, that there's too much too much tension on one or several of these cables, so that they might snap. But I think that's not a big issue because the thing is hanging anyway. But sometimes, so if I do it this method, then sometimes some of the cables will have a lot of slack and just hang down loosely, which I don't really want, because that can introduce some wobble and movement in the camera. And a different issue is that the movement will not be linear. So that going from A to B, doing it this way, just lengthening and shortening the cables to the new values, it will do some. So it will arrive at the correct point, but there will be some movement in between. Because that's it's not as simple with these 4 cables.
Yeah, it seems like maybe you mean that the basics of it is simple, but getting it to run perfectly will take quite a bit of effort.
Oh yeah, so I'm definitely not there yet. The big improvement that I did was to do small movements. So instead of doing a 2-meter move through space, I just do 5 millimeters at a time, and always in the same direction. So if I want to go from one point to a different one, and that's like 2 meters away, then I will just look at, okay, what's the vector that describes the direction, which is pretty much the same calculation as calculating the lengths of the cables that we talked about a minute ago. And on this vector, I will, in essence, I will just shorten this vector to a 5 millimeter or something, like a very small step. And that way it isn't that problematic that there's some slack, because in this short movement, this just doesn't become, the issues just doesn't become as apparent. And that way I can get more or less linear movement. And then the second way I improved this was that not all of the motors turn at the same speed, but they how do I describe this? So I turn the ones that have to move less, that those go slower pretty much in relation to the others. So which makes sure that they all, that if I go from one corner to the other, that all of the motors are continuously moving and not starting and stopping all of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. You kind of want the motors to start and stop at the same time, irregardless of how far that they have to move, right?
Yes, pretty much. And sometimes they have to switch directions in between. So if we go from one corner to the other corner, then the motors in those 2 corners that I want to move from and to, they will continue turning the same direction. But then I have 2 remaining corners, and of course, if the camera is in the middle, those remaining ones have to be much shorter than when the camera is in the first 2 corners that it's moving from and to. So the remaining ones that are not on this, that are not on the line or plane that I'm moving on, they will first have to get shorter and then longer again. So they will have to start turning in the other direction in between. But it's so I still want them to be moving continuously, pretty much.
So what's the end goal from this? Like at what point, what kind of features will this thing have when you decide you're done with this?
Oh, okay. So I would love for this to be an open source system that is pretty modular. So that, I think that would be a really cool end goal. I'm not sure if I'll get to there, or I don't know, maybe some people will be interested in helping out, and maybe some people have their own ideas and features that they want to add. So maybe this could even become a community thing. I would love to have that. So, but my personal steps that I want to have with this. So my original ideas was to mount these in the corners of my workshop, and pretty much have a super flexible camera system that I can do all kinds of camera movements within my workshops / YouTube studio. And however, that sounds really cool, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because of course I can theoretically move in this space between the 4 pillars or between the 4 mounting points. However, it gets difficult when there's stuff in between. So of course it still can move through things, and the cables and wires, they can also not move through things. So I have some stands for my lamps and lighting here, or if there's a camera tripod or a workbench or anything in the way, they cannot move through there. So I think I kind of like this lights, so these pillars I've been using. Are they called, what are they called in English? These lighting stands or
tripods? Lighting stands. That's right.
Lighting stands. Yeah. So I had these lying around. One of them I'm using for an LED panel, but I had 3 additional ones that I wasn't really using, so I used these for a test. And I think that's actually not a bad idea to keep using them. I 3D printed some buffers on top and then put some soft foam on top as well, so I can actually wedge them between the floor and the ceiling, so they are pretty stable. And I think that's for indoors, that's pretty nice, because I can just place them wherever I need them, and that way I hopefully won't have that much stuff interfering with the movement. So for me, my goal would be, it would be really cool if I could. So currently I'm using this small action cam that's mounted and that's moving around. However, I would love to put an actual camera on there. Currently I'm using a Panasonic GH5 for filming, so it's a mirrorless camera. So something in that size, that would be my personal goal, to have that, to be able to move that around and get cool shots, including the camera moving, turning, tilting, and probably even zooming and focusing the way I want. So I would love to have some kind of interface where I can pre-program the camera shot, and then let it do the rest.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
That would be pretty cool. And so one big issue with that is the instabilities, like getting it stable. I think that will be the hardest part.
Yeah, it's not like you can just tension the cables either, because then you would just go up, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. So I think it might be an advantage putting on a little bit more weight. So the mirrorless camera might even be a little bit more stable by itself, because just because it's heavier and doesn't jump around as much or doesn't wobble as much, but there will definitely be it will definitely be still hard to stabilize this. So another maker on YouTube and Twitch made a pretty similar system, and I've shown a very small part of that video in my last video, and her name is or her username is ScanLime. So the logo is a lime with a barcode on it, which I find pretty cool. And she made a system like this, I think years ago already. I'm not sure how old it was, but that's very impressive. I'm not sure if you've seen that. that one really impressed me.
I've only seen the preview on your video.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it does look very impressive because I think it's like it's her whole room, I think.
Yes, it's her whole workshop. It's pretty big. So her workshop is pretty big. I think it's like, it looks even like it's several stories high. Like it looks like a 2-story high room. At least the ceiling is very high. Yeah, so she has I'm not sure what kind of camera on there, but a fairly big one. So it's definitely either mirrorless one or DSLR. And she used a commercially available gimbal, so a motorized gimbal, that she hacked the interface to. So she opened it up and interfaced her controller with it so it would move the way she wanted. So and that's what makes it more stable. But she also talks about how getting it stable is pretty difficult. So she also has this issue that there's stuff in the way, like furniture and whatever, and she solves this kind of by mounting the camera not directly where the cables are attached, but there's a long beam. I don't know how long it is, maybe 1.50 meters or something, where the camera hangs below the point where the cables are attached. So this way she can move without the cables interfering too much, and she can get lower to the ground, which is a plus because her goal was to autonomously follow her cat around the workshop. So she has some computer vision in there and some machine learning that detects her cat and follows it around. And it can also be controlled manually, of course. So that's a really impressive system. And there's a few ideas in there that I will probably revisit in future iterations of my system. For example, her cable tensioning system. So she measures the tension on the cables in order to make sure that there's no slack or that they aren't too tense. And I think that's something that I will probably want as well if I want heavier weights on my system.
I think that is one of the most endearing part of the maker movement is that if you were to go to Scanlines, for example, and ask her to build you a custom system like this for a video production environment or whatever, but it has to follow the host of the show, for example, and not a cat. We're talking about something that would cost like $10,000, $20,000,
Yes.
$30,000 in a bespoke product. And yet she built this to follow her cat around her workshop.
Yes.
This is the best part about the maker movement. It's because makers make things because they can, because they think it's cool, because they can, not because, they have a specific problem to solve sometimes. I think it's awesome.
Yes, and usually makers share what they make, so that's something I love as well.
Oh yeah.
And they explain what they do. So makers love talking about what they do. And yeah, Scanlime, she usually does live streams where she explains what she does. So she does a lot of the things actually live, which is pretty impressive. So I would be afraid of that, I think. But making videos or blog posts about things, or putting things on Thingiverse and GitHub where other people can access it, I think that's pretty great.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's funny because I have to reach out to people to come on to the podcast. And when I tell them that the podcasts are, usually around an hour and up to 2 hours, they usually say, I don't know if I have an hour's worth of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you just mentioned that makers love talking about what they make and how they made it and etc. And I find that is absolutely true. I find there's no issues. Actually, I think the biggest issue with the podcast is going over time because makers love to talk about their projects, right?
Yeah, which is really cool. Like I get the instinct to say, do I have that much? I mean, I'm not that interesting. I mean, it's maybe a fallacy as well, because it, like, doing these things and constantly thinking about it, I don't have the feeling that I'm like super smart or doing very sophisticated things. But I think that's something that I had to get over. In because I think there's definitely most likely people interested in that and interested in my ideas and my knowledge. I mean, my videos aren't very instructive, so I don't really do a lot of how-tos or step-by-step instructions. But I think even sharing the ideas and what comes out of it, I think there's a lot of people interested in that. And yeah, I think many makers don't realize that. And I also have to sometimes remind myself to tell myself, well, I find this interesting, so there's probably a lot of people out there who would love to see it and maybe get inspired up by it, because I watch a lot of videos and other content in order to get inspiration, because I love to see what other people are doing, and to hear them talk about what they're doing and what they're excited about. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's 100% for me too. Like, I don't think I often want to emulate other people's projects. There is a few projects that I feel like I really, I need to do this because this is awesome. But at the very least, other people's projects do inspire me to make my own projects. Like your hydroponics projects. Just while you were thinking about it, my mind was wandering, and I was thinking about some way to do like a sort of a vertical racking system, like an indoor sort of like a vertical farm, but scaled for a house. And I was even thinking about how I would like it to pivot on the feet so that you can turn it from vertical to diagonal.
Nice.
If you want to bring it outside and have real sun, you would just pivot it diagonal, and the buckets or whatever, the pots would stay, they would pivot and they would stay vertical. And then you can just bring it outside, give it some sun, but on days where it's not so sunny, you bring it back inside, turn on the LEDs, those types of things. So yes, surrounding yourself with people who are intelligent, and yep, I'm talking about you too. I'm including you in this, even though you probably don't feel like it.
Well,
but
thank you.
People that are smart and have these ideas, is it just a net positive for everyone involved? Because even the people like me, I don't feel like I'm that intelligent. I mean, my wife tells me I am, but she's a little biased, I would say. But it makes me think about cool things to make, and I think the more stuff that we make, the better the entire world would be, right? The more we share, the better.
Yes. Absolutely.
You actually included you just name dropped your wife in one of your projects. I noticed that when you did the 3D printer that could play chess, you just casually dropped on us the fact that that your wife designed or wrote the vision learning code, or what do you call that? The
computer vision
code
exactly
for you. You just just glossed over it. Oh yeah, my wife wrote this, and then you continued on with the video. So let's talk a little bit about the chess project then.
Absolutely, yeah. I that was a fun project too. So let's start with my wife. She doesn't like to be on camera, or like she doesn't like the publicity, I guess, too much. So I asked her if she wanted to appear in the video, and she says, no, I don't want to be in the video. So okay, can I at least tell people that you did this? And yeah, sure, of course. So she likes doing things on the quiet side, but she does really cool stuff as well. She just got a new job doing computer graphics, actually, and so she's just finishing up her PhD in computer science, does computer graphics and computer vision. And I told her about this project, and we were talking about it, and I said, okay, maybe what would be really cool would be like camera Okay, let's start a little bit earlier. I'll first describe what the project is. I have been wanting to get some kind of mechanical chess robot thing, like a robot playing chess forever. Being a kid, or I don't know, probably in high school or maybe even earlier, probably high school, because that's when I learned playing chess. I always, and I got, when I was small, I got this chess computer, which was shaped like a chessboard and a small display where the computer would tell you which moves it wants to do, and then you had to move the chess pieces on the board around for it. But you could play chess against the computer. And somehow that was never satisfying enough for me. I wanted these pieces to move by themselves. So I started thinking about, okay, what if I put a magnet beneath, and maybe I could put magnets on the chess pieces so they could move around, but then you have the issue of other pieces being in the way, so that doesn't really work. So you kind of need some kind of arm from above that moves the pieces around. And I've been thinking about this for many, many years. So how old am I? I don't know, mid-30s now. I've been thinking about this for probably around 20 years. And I've never gotten around to do something like this. However, I now have a 3D printer I've had this for about 2 years, and I'm super fascinated by 3D printing. And it's one of these cheap FDM 3D printers. So for people not familiar with that, FDM means it's fused, or I forgot what the name for that is.
Fused deposition modeling, FDM, something like that.
Yeah. So how it works is you have a build plate on which you build your 3D. You want your 3D things to appear, and then you have above that you have a print head with a heated nozzle that melts plastic, and it drops the molten plastic and moves around, and that way you get 3D printed pieces. And yeah, you pretty much have this print head which moves around in this three-dimensional space above the build plate. And somehow, a few months ago in my head, it made click, and I made this connection to, hey, I have this space I can move around in, and I always had this idea of moving chess pieces around. So maybe I could design some kind of upgrade for the 3D printer to become a chess robot. And that's what I did. So I designed a 3D printable, of course, 3D printable gripper mechanism that attaches to the print head. It uses a string to close the mechanism, and there's a 3D printed spring in there that opens it again. And I used one of the motors. So the 3D printer has 4 motors, I think. So 3 for the 3 axis that it's moving around in, and 1 for extruding and retracting the plastic filament. And I'm using this extrusion motor to open and close, and the other 3 just moves around normally. So I didn't want to cripple my 3D printer so I couldn't use it for 3D printing anymore. I wanted it to be able to quickly attach and remove the parts for it to become a chess playing robot. And I think that went quite well. I went through I don't know, maybe 10 to 20 iterations on this gripper mechanism, and that attaches to this print head, and it can grip chess pieces, which I also 3D printed. Because regular chess pieces are round and differently shaped, so that's kind of hard to design a gripper for that. So I made my life easier for myself by designing the chess pieces myself, or by more or less copying a famous chess piece design from the famous Bauhaus art school. And I didn't know this chess design before, but but looking for chess designs on Thingiverse, I stumbled on something that looked like that. And those are pretty much just square pieces or cubes. It's almost all, like the chess pieces are all made out of cubes and are similarly sized. So it's a lot easier to design something that grips these pieces when they're all kind of similar in shape.
Was the shape more for the gripper, or does that also affect the machine vision, the computer vision side of it?
The shape was mostly for the gripper. So yeah, so that was my part of the project, was to design the gripper, or that was my idea, to design the gripper, integrate a chess AI into it. Again, I chose the kind of easiest way to do it because I already have a Raspberry Pi computer attached to my 3D printer anyways that runs Octoprint, which is a super cool open source and free software to control 3D printers, which makes things a lot easier. Like you have a nice web interface to control it and can attach a camera to it, which is really nice. And you can also interface with that software and send it commands through a programming interface over the network, for example. And yeah, I'm a computer scientist as well, like my wife. So that's what I'm kind of familiar with. And yeah, so I ran the chess AI, which is written in Python, which is not by me. I found that one as well. How was it called? Is it Sunfish? I think it's called Sunfish.
I think you put the links in the video description.
Definitely.
Though
The links are definitely in the description. And
that's pretty impressive, though. I mean, the whole principle of not only making it out of a 3D printer, but also making it so that you can still use your 3D printer with minimal effort, right? You can disconnect this whole thing with minimal effort. I think the most effort for you to convert from chess mode to 3D printing mode is in chess mode, you have to reprint the chessboard onto the bed, right?
Yes. Well, it's So the chessboard, in my case, the print bed itself, the build plate is almost black, so it's very dark. So I used white plastic filament for just to print the white what's it called, fields, or the white parts of the chessboard. So I did just one layer of plastic, so that's just 0.2 millimeters high, and the black parts there just let them. I just let them. Yeah, I didn't print anything there, so because the build plate is black anyway, and so first of all, that prints pretty quickly. If I print it once, it sticks on the build plate fairly well, so I can use it. However, I can also peel it off and put it back on later. So I've the one in the video I had actually printed earlier, and then I had to print something else in between. So I just peeled the white part of the chessboard off and lay it back on, and then I used some small clamps so as to hold it in place. So I actually don't really have to reprint the board every time.
Is there also a way to set the difficulty of the AI, or is the AI kind of set into, expert mode?
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into that. I think that's mostly controlled by how much computing power you give it, if I got that correctly. So look, I pretty much just looked at the several, some chess AIs and some open source chess tools, and just looked which is the easiest for me to interface with, and that one had a command line output that I could use, and it's written in Python, so I think I actually didn't use the command line output and parse it, but I think I looked at how to do that in Python. Anyway, I think if I understood that correctly, the difficulty is controlled by how much computing power you give it. So either by on which kind of computer do you run it? Do you run it on a Raspberry Pi? Do you run it on a laptop or something very powerful? Yeah, so I think that's how it's actually controlled. And I'm not a very good chess player, so I think any of these options are way too strong for me.
So you can actually cripple it by removing the heatsink off the CPU, and then it'll thermal throttle and won't have enough power to do.
Yeah. So
do anything.
How it works in programs. So if people are wondering how the hell that works, so I think I'm guessing a little bit here because I haven't read the whole code, but I think how this could be done is you give it a set amount of time to think, and what chess AIs often do is to try out a lot of possible moves and then to give them a score. Like a chess AI usually won't be able to test out all possible future moves because chess is too complicated too complicated a game to try out all of the possibilities. Otherwise, computers would be way too strong. So what they usually would do is to try out of several moves, or just a few into the future, like not until the game ends, but just a few into the future, and then to somehow score how the board looks like for them. So if they think this is a good new position to be in, and if they get more time to think about this, they can try more, and that way they get better. And yeah, so probably another way is to adjust some parameters in the software that tells them how long they are allowed to think about their next move.
And so how much of that, because your 3D printer had a little bit of personality. I mean, it would take the pieces that it would defeat, and it would chuck them off drop them off the board.
It looks pretty cool. That was actually mostly practical reasons, but yeah.
It would do that. It would also grab them first, like remove them, and then move their piece into place. And it would also it did a little tantrum at the end when it lost. How much of that is your involvement? How much of that was just part of, I guess, the project that you sourced?
Yeah. So that's like the movements. That's all my involvement pretty much. So a lot of that is practical reasons. Moving if the computer captures a piece of the human player, the piece needs to be removed from the board, and human players usually do that by taking their own piece, moving it towards where instead of the captured piece, and like in one swift movement, I don't know, either with one hand or with two hands, just replace that. Of course, if I just have one gripper, that doesn't work, so I had to come up with a solution for that. So the easiest solution was to just first remove the human player's piece, and it drops it in one corner of the print bed, because that's the furthest I can get away from the moving print head. That's the furthest the print head can get away from the board space. And it looks kind of cool as well, because it looks like it's kind of tossing it away. So, but that was more or less by chance that it looks pretty cool. And then it moves its own piece to that new position. And yeah, the tantrum in the end, that's kind of hard coded. So I made this, so I made this joke in there because I'm in reality, I'm just not good enough to beat this chess AI. So the game that's in the video, the first one, I'm showing the full game, and that's the actual game I played against it, and obviously I lost. And then I'm making this joke that I'm too bad for that, so I need to hack the thing and like to alter it. And I did that by pretty much just telling it, like the second part, pretty much just telling it what moves to do, so I would win. And and the tantrum in the end, so it moves its gripper arm down and just moves around randomly around the chessboard and throws around pieces. And I wanted to make a bigger part out of that for the video, but it turns out it's hard to film that and to capture that in the way that I imagined it in my head to be, like the 3D printer kind of looking upset, and that's hard to get on camera. So I think some people even missed it in the video.
Now, if you're just playing straight up, does the system know that you're cheating? Is there any way to mitigate the player cheating, or can you just cheat to your heart's content?
It won't work if you're cheating. So we've started talking about my wife writing the computer vision part, and that's super interesting. So I mounted a webcam above the 3D printer, and it's easiest to see the board if the camera is in the middle of the board, above the board. So that's the easiest way. And you asked me whether the shape of the chess pieces had anything to do with the computer vision part. I think it would have worked with regular or all kinds of chess pieces. It should work. That shouldn't be too big of a problem. That was more for the gripper. However, the colors, they were because of the computer vision. So my wife told me, okay, if you can, could you maybe not make the chess pieces black and white, because it's way easier for the computer vision to distinguish them if they have a different color than the board. So the colors, so they have these bright neon colors for the chess pieces. And that was one of the reasons, was that it's easier for the computer to distinguish them from the board. And so this part is where I don't have a lot of expertise in, but my wife does, and that's what she did. So I give her the camera stream. So I have this Raspberry Pi computer running Octopi attached to the 3D printer. The webcam is also attached to that, and we kind of worked separately on these parts. So she just got the images from the camera, and the steps that she did was to first do an edge detection to just see, okay, in this image that I'm getting, what kind of sharp edges are in this image. And of course, this is a two-dimensional image because I have one webcam. It's not a 3D camera, so I have a two-dimensional image. So it's just looking in these two dimensions, what kind of sharp edges are there. And from that, she's doing a guess where the board should be. So I don't even have to calibrate it to the computer vision or anything. It just, if the board is visible in the image, then it will probably work, because it will calibrate itself, because it looks for the edges, and then it looks whether it makes sense, because a chessboard has 8 by 8 fields. And is it called fields, or how would I
It's like a grid, I guess, an 8 by 8 grid.
Yeah, 8 by 8 grid. So so it first detects where that is, and what's pretty cool is it also detects whether I made a movement or not. So in the beginning, I thought, okay, I probably will have to tell it now you can, or when I'm finished with my move. But no, she actually wrote the part where she actually looks for changes in the board, and then once the image settles down and there isn't that much movement anymore, then she checks which of the fields or which parts of the grid have changed, and from that she looks which move was done. So which two positions are the ones that changed the most, and from where to where did the human player move their piece.
So again, I think we got a little derailed. Does it know if you're cheating, or does it
Oh,
care?
sorry. I completely
No, it's
forgot
okay.
about that question. It won't work probably. So what it does is, from this computer vision module that my wife wrote, she outputs a move that the human player did, and then that's pretty much what it's doing. So it's detecting where's the chessboard, and then detects that a move happened, and it detects which move was done by the human player. And then what I do with it, I feed this to the chess AI, and the chess AI, that's the one that holds all of the information about the chessboard. So the part that not I implemented, but where I took this open source tool that was available, and that holds all of this information. And if I do an invalid move, so cheating would be an invalid move, or removing a piece without the other, like if two humans play, if I would play you in chess, cheating could look like, I don't know, I remove a piece when you aren't looking, or I do a move that wouldn't be allowed according to chess rules, and that then the chess AI would throw an error. So it would, I don't know, I guess it would. So if it's an invalid move, it would tell you that it's an invalid move, and my code at the moment can't can't correct that, so I can't repeat that or anything. So I'm not sure, it might crash or it might stop at that position. I'm not sure what would happen with the actual chess robot. And like removing something from the board, the chess AI just wouldn't know about it and would assume it's still there and continue like you wouldn't have illegally removed a figure or something.
It doesn't update the AI totally. It only updates the pieces that have moved. Okay.
Right, exactly. So I'm just so with the camera, I'm just detecting what has moved from where to where, and then the truth about the game is in the chess AI.
Interesting. That's really neat. Another question: how long does it take from your move being done until the 3D printer starts moving its own piece?
Theoretically, that doesn't take a long time. There's a few things that play in here, and I've learned a thing or two about 3D printers while doing that, or especially about Octoprint, which is this tool, this open source software to control 3D printers. So let's say everything works fine. So we have the camera mounted above the board. The human player makes a move. Now what we do is we have a configuration value that tells the computer vision part of the software how long it should wait before it does anything after it stops detecting movement. So it knows no move has happened. Then when I move my hand into the camera view, the computer vision part will notice, okay, there's some movement in the camera image, and now I will just start looking for the point in time where the camera image settles down again and there's no movement in there anymore. And here we put some configuration value in there that where we can tell it how long it should wait, because sometimes, like if my hand is very still and not continuously moving, it might falsely think that I've finished my move, but maybe my hand is still in there. So we wait a short amount of time. So that's maybe about a second delay or something like that. So we wait maybe a second until we're sure that the move is finished. So after I've removed my hand from the camera view, there's about a second of delay for the computer vision tool. Then the computer vision detects a move that's super fast. That's like, I don't know, it's probably milliseconds for detecting which move happened. And then then I give this move to the chess AI, and then the chess AI has time to think about its move. And since computers are pretty strong in playing chess nowadays, that's super quick as well. So I think that's always below a second, maybe around a second, or
Oh, wow.
max 2 seconds. So total it would be, I don't know, 3 seconds or something until it's done with its movement, and then it can start moving its own piece. And that takes some time, of course, because if I'm moving the printhead max speed, that's still relatively slow. But yeah. However, there's some things there which make it not that easy. And the hardest part for me was that I can't detect where the printhead is at the moment through the Octoprint API. So I can tell it to move somewhere, but it won't tell me where it is at the moment. The 3D printer knows this. So on the 3D printer, there's a small display, and it tells me the coordinates of the nozzle. So it knows that exactly where it is. But the Octoprint doesn't have that implemented to read that from the printer. So what I have to do is, if the printer does a move, I have to assume the worst case timing, or I would have to measure I haven't done this. So what I do is I measured the worst case timing. So how long does the longest movement take, and if it's capturing a piece, it takes longer. So it first has to remove a piece, then it takes time to remove the piece and then to move its own piece. I distinguish between capturing pieces and a regular move, and I measured the worst case timing. So what's the longest move time for those? And then I wait until that's finished, and I have to wait until until that timer is done before I, as the human player, are allowed to or am allowed to make my next move, because only then the computer vision part will activate again, because I first have to move the printhead out of the camera view in order for the computer vision to work. So that was my biggest issue with that. And it's not audible on the video, but I put a chime in there. So my laptop plays a chime sound for me to know when I'm allowed to make my next move.
So there's a little bit of growing pains if this were ever to become a commercial product, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm guessing it would probably not be too hard to implement that. So I also had to modify the printer firmware in order for this to work. Because there was one other thing. Usually the extruder, so the motor that moves the filament, and in a 3D printer, it usually moves the filament in order to get, for the filament to melt in the heated nozzle in order to 3D print something. And usually in a 3D printer, it's not a good idea to push filament through the nozzle if the nozzle is cold. So usually the 3D printer will prevent you from extruding plastic while it's cold. However, I used the same motor to open and close this gripper mechanism, and I don't want it to be at 200 degrees Celsius all of the time just to be able to move that. So I had to modify my 3D printer firmware to allow for these so-called cold extrusions, so to allow the extruder motor to also move while it's cold.
Yeah, a lot of challenges, but ultimately, I mean, all a 3D printer is, if you wanted to sacrifice your 3D printer, for example, ultimately it would be a little bit simpler, because then you don't have to have in mind that this needs to still 3D print after you're done.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I thought about, like, it's also a little, like, the loudest part on it is the fan that cools the nozzle, and I don't really need that either, but that's not possible to turn it off in software. And I thought about opening it up and adding a hardware switch where I could switch that off just so it would be a little bit more quiet. But yeah, it's like such projects take time, and that was too low on my priority list to put in there. So
and if you forget, it could be catastrophic as well. If you forget to turn it
true.
back on after.
Yeah, that could be bad. I think like the firmware of the printer might also protect you against it, so it might stop when it sees that the temperature rises higher than it wants it to rise. Yeah, but still, yeah, you're right. That could be an issue if you're actually using it as a printer. Yeah.
Well, it's a fantastic project, and I'm really glad you've made it, because it looks awesome. It seems to work. Be honest though, do you actually play chess against your 3D printer since you built it?
Yeah, I did play a few games against it. The tolerances are a bit difficult. So the gripper doesn't move a lot from open to closed state, which is, so first of all, it's easier to make small movements. If I would redesign this, I would make it to be able to open further, so it's less problematic if the chess pieces aren't aligned super precisely on the board. Like if I as a human player place my piece and like rotate it a little bit, and then the gripper can collide with it if it doesn't fit perfectly. So that's one caveat here, and it works, and I was able to play several games against it smoothly, but I have to be real careful when placing the pieces. It's also not super easy to make it open more, because next to that piece there are other pieces, so I also don't want it to collide with the neighboring pieces. So it's not too easy. So it works, but that's one of the issues which makes it a little bit impractical to actually play against it. But I did play a little bit against it. I'm just not good enough to defeat it, so that's why I stopped again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either.
Yeah. So people suggested, and I had the idea myself, that it would be kind of cool, especially like during the pandemic, we were all socially distanced and isolated. We could, if two people have their own 3D printer, they could play against the remote person, and the 3D printer would do the movement part. So I play against you and I do my move. My printer detects what I did, and your printer actually does the move that I did here on your side, and vice versa.
That would be awesome, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I revisit this project, that's one thing I would love to add, because that wouldn't be too hard, actually. And the second thing is the chess AI and computer vision currently runs on a separate computer than the Raspberry Pi that is attached to the printer. And it would be just way more convenient if everything was running on the OctoPi Raspberry Pi that's attached there. And that shouldn't be too hard either, I think, because that's also Python, and all the software is already in Python. So I think that should be relatively simple. So that's the other feature that I might add if I find the time to revisit the project.
Well, either way, I'm looking forward to your revisit, but the project can live on in its current form, because it is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun, definitely. It was definitely fun, yeah.
Awesome. Towards the tail end of the podcast now, I typically like to ask all my guests the exact same question and see their different takes on it. So the question goes, you have a government agency that gives you a grant to start the business of your dreams. So think unlimited money. Profitability is not a concern for this grant, but you do have to provide a service or a product. What do you start as a business?
Oh, wow. I have actually been thinking about this question kind of, because like since starting my YouTube channel, this is not my main job. So when I started my YouTube channel, I had a full-time job at a local university here as a researcher. So I was researching some cryptography related things and machine learning stuff. Since then, this project has stopped, and I've started a part-time job again at the university, and because I have been having so much fun with these projects in YouTube that I wanted a bit more time for it. So it's actually now, kind of my part-time job doing YouTube. Of course, starting out a YouTube channel like this isn't super profitable in the beginning. But that led me to think about in this direction already. So I think I would actually love to continue making videos, because I told you I'm interested in tinkering, in making things, but I'm also interested in creating in videos, in making small movies, I would say, and bringing these two parts together. I think that's something that I would actually love to keep doing. And if money was no issue, what I would like to provide is, first of all, the inspiration for doing things, but also the means to do such projects yourself. So maybe instructions on how to do these projects, 3D models that help you, that you can use and integrate in your own projects, maybe source code, because I am a computer scientist, so source code for these small microcontrollers, Arduinos, ESPs, that you can use in your own project. Actually, with my last video with the cable camera, I think that would be a super cool thing to expand and actually have something like a product for people to use to make their own videos, because commercial systems like this that are used for sports events or big concerts, they are extremely expensive. They work a lot better, of course, like there's a reason why they're expensive, but having something like this affordable, that would be my favorite product at the moment.
I think a kit would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like it comes all disassembled, you put it together, and maybe you have a few.
Even a modular kit, like where you can choose the parts that you need. Like, do you want it in a room? Do you maybe want pillars that you can put on a larger field, like in your garden? They could go a bit higher up than in your room, and then you would be able to choose between different motors and cable lengths so that it fits your needs. Something like that would be great. Awesome. And there's one more thing. This month I'm working on a video that incorporates art. That's because a friend of mine and me, we have last year we participated in a 3D printing competition that we were actually able to win, quite surprisingly for us. And we proposed 3D printed art that makes 3D sculptures, 3D printable sculptures out of personal memories, such as photos that you have, or maybe videos of your kid or your wedding day or something. You can take this digital information, put it in our algorithm, and it will generate an art sculpture out of that can then be 3D printed, either on a budget with a home 3D printer, or if you want, also in high quality, like with metal 3D printers. And that's also something that we have been thinking about making available. And my next video for this month will be on this topic. So stay tuned for that.
That sounds awesome. It sounds like I've asked you to come onto the podcast a couple weeks too early.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Do you have recurring guests? We can do this again sometime.
Actually, I have been very irresponsible, and so your episode is actually going to go up this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So not this week, but next week. So I have gone through my backlog, and I have not been responsible enough to refill it.
Well, you've been pretty busy with the podcast. Unfortunately, I haven't listened to too many episodes, just a few. I think that was last year. So I have some catching up to do as well, because I really loved the ones that I listened to. So really cool podcast, and I'm really happy that I could be on it.
That's kind of my motivation for the podcast, is that people are busy. And so if I make it now, it's going to exist forever, right? So people can take their time and listen to it whenever they discover it or whenever they have time for it. And I really like the idea of timelessness. Like none of your projects we talked about today are going to disappear, right? Unless you delete your YouTube channel. But I mean, the ideas still will float around. And so I do enjoy topical podcasts that go on like current events and stuff, but these sort of makery ones, they're like a time capsule. They're going to last forever, which I think is really appealing. And plus, selfishly, I get to speak to a bunch of awesome people for a couple hours, so that's pretty good too.
Yeah, and I mean it's a good way to be selfish, because you're giving this to other people as well, and people can listen to it. And yeah, I've learned about some really cool, like, even though I haven't listened to all of the episodes, I looked through the titles and through your guests, and I've discovered some really cool people in there as well. So I wouldn't call that selfish at all, actually.
But I mean, for me, I feel like the podcast gives me access to these people, right? Like you typically, small creator. I think I started the podcast when I had around 5,000 subscribers or so. Look, it's a small, I'm still a small channel, and getting access to these behemoths in their fields, it's amazing. And honestly, I haven't had a single bad guest. Like, all the guests have been amazing. They're all super intelligent. They're all super into what they're doing, which is awesome, and they're very interesting. And you included. It's been pretty awesome.
Before I started my YouTube channel, I, like you say, getting access to cool makers and people who make cool things. These people, people often feel out of reach, and like, I love watching content and people making things, and just looking what other people do, and and for me, these people are kind of stars and like out of reach. But starting my YouTube channel, I was actually lucky that through my friend Bleep Track, who did these generative art PCBs that I talked about in the beginning, I got introduced to a few people that also make YouTube videos, and especially the maker topic. And I've been super happy with how nice it is to be in contact with people and how helpful people are in this maker community. I've had some contacts in a local maker space, and these are really cool people. But like, extending it to people all around the world that make things, that's been kind of a new experience for me. And I love how cool it is and how helpful people are.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, the maker community is awesome. There are not a lot of gatekeepers, which is great. Everyone is very kind. Everyone speaks about their projects. I'm working on a project. I'm working on making my own version, I guess, of something that maker Dustin Watts has made. And when I go onto his Discord, people making versions of his projects or his project directly, he must spend hours every day helping them, with either bugs or helping them with common issues or whatever. It's insane the amount of help that he's given for nothing, for free. Yeah. So I'm really excited to get this project done with, so I can make a video and send people to his channel and hopefully send people to his Patreon. Because, I mean, the man deserves it. He created a great project and he helps people through it. It's awesome.
Yes, yeah. His channel is really cool. I have one of his projects that I started soldering on yesterday, actually, laying here in front of me right at the moment. So that's really cool.
Is it the free touch deck?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually, I can spill the beans here because the video is going to come at some point soon. But I don't have the same ESP32 as he used for that project. So I designed my own combiner board.
Oh, nice.
So that you can use, the one I have and still make his project. And I
use his
plan
code
on releasing.
Then?
Yeah,
cool.
It uses his code, it uses it's basically his project. But the ESP32 combiner board is custom to a different board than he used.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm going to release it once it's done.
That's awesome.
And then, so more people can easily make his free touch deck. Because I honestly feel, I'm going to touch on this in the video, obviously, but I honestly feel like the way he designed the free touch deck is exactly the way I wanted to do it, but I couldn't think of a way to do it like that. So he is just he's the brilliant mind behind exactly what I wanted to do to get accomplished.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I'm making a video dedicated to his project.
Yeah, I absolutely feel what you're saying, because I was looking for a project like this, and this does exactly what I wanted as well. And actually a friend of mine ordered some of these combiner boards. I think there is a minimum amount of boards that you have to order if you order directly from the PCB manufacturer, and he had some left over, so I got 2 of these combiner boards from him. So that's how I got started with this. And then I thought, well, I have some ESP32 boards here, so that will be fine. So I ordered the touch screens for that. And then when I first sat down to start with this project, I realized that I had ordered the wrong touch screens, so the pins didn't fit on that combiner board. I already had the board, so I ordered different touch screens which did fit, and then I realized that actually my ESP32 boards don't fit either. Somehow I hadn't checked that the first time I started looking at this board. So that's maybe something like your issue. So maybe your board would have been my solution, but of course I already had the combiner board, so now I got fitting ESPs as well, and I have use for them. I really want to get into the PCB design sometime, because I've never done that, and that's something that
it is super cool. I would definitely recommend. Actually, I have a video. So what happened is my combiner board, I'm not a designer, a PCB designer. I'm actually fairly new at it. And my first revision actually failed. I made a couple of mistakes. Actually, I think I have about 4 mistakes on it. So it still works if I solder a jumper wire, a bodge wire. But I decided to shift the focus of this video, the one that it was supposed to be about Dustin Watts' awesome project, and make it about failure and how iterative design is okay. Because basically I have a PCB sponsor, so it doesn't cost me a thing, but this failure, like for me to order 10 boards from a PCB house with shipping, is $14.
Yeah.
So basically I was stressing over the fact that I had designed it wrong. I have my tolerances wrong. I have my hole sizes wrong. My board is like touching the top of the SD card and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I'm stressing over $14. And honestly, learning something like this, having a second revision that'll be actually, nearly flawless, or maybe flawless if I can cross my fingers, is worth more than $14 anyways. So basically my video is focusing on iterative design, and once I get the updated boards, then I can make the video about the free touch deck. That's
really cool, because I think that's something that held me back for a long time, that I wanted everything to be perfect the first time, and it's just usually there's no good reason for that, because you can learn so much more from iterating. And like, of course, sometimes it can cost you, so I guess you have to sometimes consider if you have super expensive investments. But like you say, if it doesn't cost too much, You can learn so much more from iterating.
That's right. And I think it's important because I need to remind myself that it's okay to make mistakes and to have quote unquote failures. And so I feel like it's important to tell others, the people who watch my edited videos and you think I don't make mistakes. I mean, it's completely the opposite, right?
Yes.
So that's why I feel like it's important. I have to share the fact that I made a mistake on these boards and literally would only cost me $14. Like that's nothing compared to the learning. And if you think of, especially Americans, they spend, tens of thousands of dollars per semester going to college. Well, you learn a lot more by doing and failing than by sitting in a classroom for a semester,
Yes. And also, like, I think like college education definitely has its value, but I find it amazing and fascinating how much you can learn online nowadays, like through YouTube and through all of these other channels that are available, and even for free. That information is so available. It's so amazing.
Absolutely. And that's one of my goals too, is to disseminate as much knowledge as possible. I'm actually a college professor part-time at the moment, teaching the automotive profession.
Oh, cool.
And my goal is to eventually have all of the lessons I teach in class available for free on YouTube on a separate automotive channel. But
nice.
That's my goal. I believe knowledge should be free and it should be shared. I think overall, all us humans, we're on the same boat. And I think the more people that know stuff, the better we are all together.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah. So speaking about learning, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go nuts.
So I'm super interested in so many different kinds of things, and like making YouTube videos and projects. I want to continue learning new things, and I said I want to go into look into PCB design. I have all these other ideas what I want to learn. Is there any specific thing that you would like to learn in the near future or whenever? Is there anything that a skill or something that you've always wanted to try or learn?
Yeah, a lot. I think the big thing for the near future is programming. Programming and I, we got together very young. It was very passionate, and then it fizzled out, and we don't get along anymore. Basically, I learned back in high school in the early 2000s. I learned I took coding classes, but we were working in Visual Basic, so it's not quite the same as sort of like writing Arduino C or Python or anything like that. It was very object oriented. You drag things onto a screen and then you edit the parameters. It's not the same as writing code. And math and I are the same thing. We don't get along.
Oh, I have the same thing. Yeah, math is yeah.
You're at least the second coder to tell me that. So that's hopeful for me. But there's something about the way that you write code. That code needs to be written. Not that you specifically, but that you must write code that doesn't work very well with my way of thinking. And so it's a lot of effort. I've done some simple projects in Arduino, but it's not. It doesn't work with me. It doesn't work with the way my brain works to write code, and it's even harder for me to read someone else's code and try to understand it. And so the short-term goal is to learn coding. So learn coding in depth and sort of add that to my toolbox of skills. I'm probably going to start with Python. I know a little bit of Python. I took I did codeacademy.com for, I don't know, I did the first module of Python. So I can understand kind of the structure. But it's hard for me to get from learning the structure and how to write it and translating that to how to accomplish a certain goal. So that's what I need to work on. So Python right now is on my short-term list of things I need to learn.
So I've been trying to think about how to approach learning to code, because for me that was my university studies. As a yeah, like I said, I did computer science, and we learned coding there as well. So, but what you said earlier, it's like you learn a lot more from actually doing things. So it's, yeah, but with coding, it's interesting. I'm not sure. I guess I'm quite happy I have this university education in computer science that I can now use. I'm not yeah, but like actual coding, I also had to do it in order to learn it. Like actually hands-on coding is necessary to get better on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was why the first time I got my hands on an Arduino, it was the goal was to learn how to code because it's very weird. You could type things in Python like print hello world and it would just show up on the terminal, and it's like not that exciting.
Yeah.
And coming from an automotive background, I really wanted my coding to have some real world consequences. I wanted, a light to turn on or something. To me, it's more,
Yes.
it was more visual and more concrete. So that's the reason I bought an Arduino in the first place. But yeah, I basically need to do it. And I bought a Circuit Playground Express, which is it's a board by Adafruit, which supports CircuitPython. And I also have Sion, the unexpected maker, sent me his Tiny Pico, which supports MicroPython. And so those two boards will be the jumping off points for Python. I already have a couple of projects in mind, and I think that's how I'm going to approach it. I'm going to, I have a project in mind, and I'm going to start iterating. I'm going to start, the very basics, like can I blink an LED using CircuitPython and MicroPython? And then the next step will be, can I accept inputs from buttons and stuff like that? And I think I'm going to work my way up.
Yeah.
And I think at the same time, I'm going to document it in a series of videos to help people in my situation learn to code, right? Maybe they could follow along with me.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
That's more where my channel is focused. Like, I see that your channel is about completed projects pretty much. And that's kind of what you alluded to at the beginning. You use your channel to sort of complete things. And I had to actually make a New Year's resolution for 2021 to actually finish some projects, because mostly my YouTube channel is for A, messing around with stuff, and B, instructional things. So that those are the two main focuses. It's only this year that I started, finishing stuff.
Yeah, but for instructional things, like you have to kind of finish your instructions and then you will have something finished as well. Like it might not be a hardware project or product or something, but you will have these instructions that you have finished and put out there, which is of course super useful. So that's something like doing instructions. I would love to put out more information about the things that I do. But this also takes time. Like it takes so much time to prepare things, to write down things, to document it in a way that other people can follow it. So yeah, I'm really hoping I can in the future add more instructional things to either to my YouTube channel or in some other way. Yeah, but at the moment I'm a little bit afraid of it, because it's like I want it to be good for people to be able to actually follow it and do things according to.
Yeah, I don't have that handicap. None of my videos are good.
I don't believe that.
No, but look at the difference. I mean, your channel's about a year old.
About a year.
My channel's about 5 years old. You have something like 12 videos, and I have 315 or so. So there's a difference in the sort of the scope of the, I think the scope is the right word.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the scope of the videos. So where I will do instructional videos, I'll be talking about how to select a color on an RGB LED, for example, and that'll be a 22-minute video. Whereas you have a 9-minute video that seems like it took you, 150 hours to achieve.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the 3D printing 3D printer chess that was interesting. So because in that month I had the idea. I'm doing monthly videos, so that's my resolution to do one video a month. And in that month, when I worked on the 3D printer chess, I had no ideas until about the middle of the month, and then I had 2 weeks from the idea to finishing it, and that was interesting. Like
That's incredible.
I won't be able to do this very often. I was unemployed at that time, so I had a little bit more time. I wouldn't be able to repeat that very often. So that was definitely my fastest project, the most workload in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, that's an insane amount of work. I don't think I could keep up with that pace. I mean, I'm underemployed right now. I'm on a 7-hour-a-week contract with my college, and I do, let's see, I don't know, I do like 6 hours at the garage where I typically work. So I'm not really doing that many hours of in class and in shop time, but I've got a lot of, as a professor, I've got a lot of things I have to do on the outside, and plus it's spring here, so there's a lot of stuff I have to do with the house, like I got to clean outside and all sorts of stuff. So, and plus, I mean, I'm not what you would call an efficient or a hard worker.
Me neither.
I do need my downtime, so yeah, there's those things.
Yeah, I think in the future, when I'm getting to more sophisticated projects or to projects that I have to learn more for, like so far I've stuck to projects where I was fairly certain that I would be able to finish them or to do the things, like where I had the skills to do the project, even though I had, of course, every time learn a little bit, but there were fairly small steps. So now that I'm getting to like new projects and maybe even getting more courage to do projects where I have to learn more for them, then maybe I'll have to do more incremental videos as well. Like the cable camera, it's not finished. I definitely want to keep working on that. So the first video was on my first steps on my experiments with that. So yeah.
But yet it still ends up being a usable thing. It's not perfect, but you still got it to a point where you could feasibly use it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. So maybe it's for me, I guess this is defining the steps that I wanted to take. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and just closing off the podcast here, where can the people find you? Where do you want them to go? Do you want them to go straight to your YouTube channel, or do you have other socials?
Yeah, YouTube channel is great. So that's Matou Makes on YouTube. And other than that, I'm most active on Twitter. And I'm also at Matou Makes on Twitter. So that's Matou Makes, without any spaces or anything, both on Twitter and YouTube. I also have a website, matoumakes.net, but there isn't too much additional information there. So I put the videos up there as well. I have some old blog posts there. But I think most interesting stuff happens on YouTube and maybe on Twitter.
And because typically my guests that I have on don't want to mention it, I'm going to do it for you. Matou also has a Patreon page, so if you want to help support him, you can go on patreon.com/MatouMakes, MatouMakes. He has a $3 tier, so if you don't feel that committal, just go onto that tier. But you can go up to $13, I think, if you want. So I would suggest you do that if you like the stuff that he's doing, because being a maker does not pay, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing about it. It would love to put more time into it, but it's to see how to pay the bills.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast, taking some of your precious time away from your projects.
Thank you for having me. It's been really cool to talk to you.
And I hope the listeners out there will go check out his YouTube channel, hit the subscribe. I know it doesn't seem like a big gesture, but it means a lot for a YouTuber to get more subscribers.
Absolutely.
It also tells YouTube that this content is good, so it helps them get views as well. And I hope to hear from you guys on the comment section. Let us know what Matou can improve, or let us know what you'd like him to work on next. Thanks for listening, everyone.